of Hawke.
Thanks, Darby. Good to see you. I didn't spend much time in my political days up here because it wasn't very fertile Labor territory, I must say. But I think your mob will change that. I must say, in the very short time that Josh has been working with me now for 20 years, he's part of me, in the very short time we've been here, we've been very favourably impressed by the spirit of the people of this town. And I want to thank you for turning up in such numbers and with such enthusiasm tonight. Obviously, I'm not going to talk for a very long time, but I think I'll say a few words I'd like to say to give you encouragement in the tough task we've got ahead. You're absolutely right about the quality of this government. It's a very, very bad government, led by a very inept and bad Prime Minister. We've been through some tough times in recent years, and for a while, in a sense, we were our own worst enemy at the federal level, the way we were fighting and squabbling with one another. But we've had bad times in the past, and we've got over them and come back and have governed well, and we can do that again. Now, I just want to give you a few thoughts that you should keep in your mind, I think, as a basis for your campaigning when we move into the next election. When you think of the Australian Labor Party, you are thinking about the institution and the trade union movement with it, which has done more than any other institution to establish the condition and quality of life of people in this country.
Yeah.
You can look every fellow Australian in the eye and say to them, without fear of contradiction, the wages and conditions of employment that you enjoy, you owe to the labour movement of Australia. Yeah. Australian employers haven't been a philanthropic mob who've said, oh my God, you're doing well, thank you very much. Now I think here's some more money, it's a shorter working week. We had to fight the bastards. Not just fight them in industrial action, but through your union dues, you financed those who had the privilege of going into the Arbitration Commission and fighting for improved conditions. Everything that people enjoy today in terms of their wages and conditions of employment are owed to the labour movement, either through strike action, industrial action, action of the Arbitration Commission, or action of Labor governments supported by the trade union movement. And that's something that you can say directly, you can look them in the eye, and they cannot contradict you because it is an established fact. And when you look at our political labour movement, we are the ones who have initiated all the positive changes in this country, both in terms of internally in Australia and in terms of our relations with the region and the rest of the world. I was just talking today to the Toowoomba and the Surat Basin Enterprise group, a big, very, very big luncheon. We had best part of 300 people there. And I just gave them an example. Gough Whitlam wasn't a perfect Prime Minister, he was a very, very good Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Very, very will always be indebted to him for was his vision in regard to China. He saw that this was going to be the leading country in the future, and against all the odds he went up there when he was leading the opposition, and when he became Prime Minister recognised it. And that was just an example of the sort of initiatives that have been taken by Labor. I was fortunate enough to be the Prime Minister of a cabinet which I think is universally recognised as the best cabinet since Federation. Had a marvellous team of ministers, and we were able to turn this country around. We did it on the basis of not setting Australian against Australian, but bringing Australians together. And this is a story that you should tell. I said during that election campaign that as soon as I was elected, I would call a national economic summit and call the representatives of all the major institutions in Australia. I did that within a month. I instructed Treasury that every delegate was to be provided with a brief setting out the economic facts, the problems, the challenges confronting Australia. And every delegate had that. Now remember this, there were delegates there from employers, large business, small business, the trade unions, state governments, local governments, the churches, welfare organisations. A totally representative group of people we met in the Parliament, the old Parliament House. And I set out the facts. I said, we've got to change. I need a mandate. Some of the things we'll have to do will be tough for some people. For instance, we had to reduce tariff barriers. And I said that if there's a section of the workforce that suffers because of these actions, and they suffer in the national interest, then in the national interest we must protect them and help them with retraining and relocation allowance. And because we were honest and straightforward with those representatives, all our Australian institutions, I got a unanimous, well I say unanimous, there's only one against the communicator, the bloke called Joe Jelke Peterson. But every other delegate, unanimous mandate given to me to go about changing a situation which had been described by the Prime Minister of Singapore, Harry Lee, just 3 years earlier in 1980. He said, if Australia keeps going the way it is, it will finish up the poor white trash of Asia. And that was a terrible indictment, but it was a terribly accurate indictment. And the people of Australia responded to that Labor leadership. There's one other thing that you must remember when you're going out campaigning, and that's the myths of conservative politics in this country. They've perpetrated two myths. They're utterly untrue, but you should remember them. And you should ram it down the throats of every person you're talking. Anyone who's got any doubt about where they stand, whether they should support us or the other mob. The two myths are these: that they are, firstly, they are the best economic managers. Now, what a lot of nonsense! What was the situation that I inherited in 1983? Double-digit unemployment, double-digit inflation. Our industry just disappearing. They didn't have a clue about how to go about managing the economy. And it was Labor that turned the economy around. In some senses, even more tragic than that myth is the myth that they are the ones to handle the international security of this country. Now, this is the most appalling myth and misrepresentation in Australian politics. Look at their bloody record. Look at their bloody record. When the greatest threat to Australia's sovereign independence occurred, where were they? They were in government. When we were at war with Japan, when that war broke out. They were the Australian government. They depended on the support of two independents. Their performance under Menzies and then Page was so pathetic, their incapacity to rally the country to make the decisions that had to be made, that Coles and Wilson, the two independents, said, "Be gone!" You are unfit to govern. And they crossed the floor and brought in that great Labor leader, John Curtin. Now, there's no answer to that. These people say, we are the ones that should trust the security of the country at the time of greatest peril, found wanting and thrown out by the independents. And Labor came in and led the country to victory. But the buggers never learned. Their concept of foreign policy was to look to Washington, their Washington say, me too, yeah, we're there. So they lobbed us in that horrible, disastrous Vietnam War. 500 odd Australia's finest young men dead. Never an apology from the Conservatives. Interesting that some of the military leaders have apologised, said they were wrong. But no apology from the Conservatives for that disastrous decision. But they never learn. We go on when John Howard, Prime Minister, Iraq. Now, before the invasion of Iraq, I wrote a letter to the Australian newspaper about 3 weeks before the invasion. I said in that letter that Osama bin Laden must be on his knees morning and night praying to Allah that the Americans will invade, because there'd be nothing which would give greater emphasis and support to the forces of subversion than such an invasion. Of course, that's what happened. Bush invaded. Again, we went along with it. And it is the consensus opinion of the 11 United States intelligence agencies who wrote the analysis after war that this was a disaster and that it had strengthened the forces of terrorism. Now look at that record. Second World War, Vietnam, Iraq. But how dare they get up and mislead the Australian people that they have the credentials to look after the security and the international relations of this country. So my friends, you have it. We have a proud history, as I pointed out, in positive terms of the things we've done. In education, and the basic issues that affect the essential quality of life of Australians. Education and health. These are the areas. What leadership, what initiative has there been in those two areas from any Conservative government in our history? Not one. No. All the progress has come from Labor government. Health and education. So you simply say to your fellow Australians, as you go to concede, yes, we have made some mistakes, and certainly some of the disputes in regard to leadership over recent years has been less than edifying. But you say to them, look at the basic important issues, things that I've been talking about, education, health, all the positives of Labor, and look at the claims of the Conservatives in these fundamentally important areas of economic management and security of the country. And they are revealed for what they are, totally inadequate and indeed dangerous. So that's the message, my friends. We'll have to work hard. There's very few governments have so much deserved to be one-term governments as Abbott, but it's not going to be given to us on a plate. It's going to be something that requires the hardest work of our parliamentary representatives, but in the end, what it gets down to is you. People like you all around Australia, dedicated to our great party, proud of its history and sure of its capacity to lead this country forward. Well, I always say when I'm talking like this, particularly in the election period, I challenge people to say, think of 20 people, each one of you, think of 20 people who you know, who are not necessarily Labor supporters, uncertain about what to do, and commit yourself to trying to win 20 people over. If each one of our members around Australia do that, we're where we should be. Home and bloody home.